Evening. It is 5:30. Now that Tracy's arrived, I'll go ahead and call this study session to order. First up, we have a public comment period. This is an opportunity for the public to address council for items not on tonight's agenda, so I would just invite you up to the podium. You can state your name and address. Seeing no public comment, I will go ahead and move down to a round table discussion amongst council members. Council, did you have anything that you would like clarification on, let's say, for the agenda coming up, or just to discuss? Any questions for city staff? Peter?
One for our clerk. When will we know if there'll be any added cost on the proposal 2, I think it was, for the voting and the extended number of hours? I will need more poll workers for longer times, things like that. I'm assuming it won't be, today, but in the next 6 months or 9 months.
I haven't heard any updates as far as when we'll get clarification from the state exactly what Proposal 2 means, but I will let you know as soon as I hear something.
Sounds good, thank you.
I just had a real quick thing actually about Veterans Day. I kind of wanted council and city staff to maybe have a discussion. I did hear from a community member that said that there was an event at the Veterans Memorial, and I know city is not usually involved with planning that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. But she was really hoping that it could somehow be made more than it was. So I know she was willing to kind of get involved and spearhead that. I mean, it is such a very, very important thing that I would like it to be much more of a event as well.
Yeah,
so
historically, Pete Yankovic with the American Legion organizes that. This would be the first year I was not able to make it down there. Besides the second year I have been able to make it down there because I had other plans scheduled that morning. I've also been told that the American Legion in Allegan has disbanded and the building is for sale. And people are directed to go down towards Otsego, I believe it is. So I just heard that through the grapevine, and people at the Eagles, they're all members there too, and they said, yeah, they used to just do bingo, but they don't do bingo anymore. I'm not sure how council, would like to address that. We also do not get involved in the planning of Memorial Day services either, where the parade starts downtown and ends up at the chapel at Oakwood Cemetery. I mean, we set up chairs and, that kind of stuff, but that's the extent of our planning or oversight or involvement. So if you're gonna have that conversation, you might wanna have that, couple it with that as well, because Memorial Day Parade and the service is also planned by Mr. Pete Yankovic.
yeah, and I believe there was some sort of an issue with the Memorial Day Parade this year, I think.
So I did participate, or I did observe that. The only issue was a gentleman who fell on the sidewalk near the post office, an observer, just as the fire department was going by. So the fire department stopped, and they're at the beginning of the parade. So there was about a 40-minute break in that parade.
Yeah, I'm referring more to that just people weren't really aware that it was happening or, what was going on.
It was a full parade, it was a full observance, and it was the typical crowd size at the Oakwood Cemetery. So, yeah, but then again, it's not something that the city really oversees.
Like I said, I don't necessarily know that the city needs to get involved with that. I just wanted to bring it up in case we do want to be more active in that celebration. I don't know what anyone else is thinking. Like I said, I do know someone who would like to be involved. I referred her to speak with Pete Yankovic, so hopefully, they can start a discussion, but I know we do a few parades. I don't know if we want to do a few more. I don't know what anyone's thoughts are. Just told her I'd bring it up. Anybody? Dave?
No, I think that makes sense. It's a great point. Sounds like promotion might be something we could get involved in if we've got ways to let the community know that things are happening. Piggybacking on our existing processes might make sense. But yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up.
No problem. So maybe just something to keep in mind, and I know that the group that usually does this is aging, and that was one of the things that she had mentioned, that there are so many veterans in our area that are not necessarily, you know, of the Vietnam or Korean War era too, that we could maybe tap into, so. Okay, cool. Anything else for roundtable? I know we've got a busy agenda with some presentations, so we will go ahead and move on down to the presentation from Siegfried Crandall. Tracy, did you want to preface anything before he begins?
I don't think so. I think he'll get it covered and just report his findings in that.
Perfect, welcome.
Thanks. Thanks for inviting me to your meeting. My name is Dan Veldhuisen. I'm a CPA with Siegfried Crandall. Been working with the city for about 20 years now, so we certainly appreciate the long-term relationship. Also appreciate the assistance that we receive from Joel, as well as Tracy and her team. There's several things that you need to know from your auditor, but one of the key things is the quality of the accounting personnel that you have in place. And I think Tracy has really demonstrated that she's done an excellent job, especially the last couple of years, and her team does a good job working together. So that's important to know. I won't spend too much of your time, but I always like to talk about two key things that I think you should know from your auditor, and those are the auditor communications, as well as just a few comments about your financial condition. Do you all have the financial statements in front of you? I'll just refer to a handful of pages. What I always like to start with is the auditor's report, which is the page immediately after the table of contents. It's important that you know that that report and one other that I'll reference is the only thing in this document that belongs exclusively to us, and we talk about that in this report. The auditor's report has changed dramatically in the last year for the first time in many years. Probably doesn't mean much to you, but for us, it's changed from a 3-paragraph statement to a 3-page report. There's a number of reasons for that. And one of the good things is that we talk about our opinion at the very beginning. The second paragraph says that the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. That's what you hired us to do, to give an opinion on the financial statements. It's known as an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion. Unfortunately, too many times in the press I hear that the auditors gave a clean opinion or this opinion, so everything must be fine, and that's not necessarily true. I will tell you that all 2,000 governments in the state of Michigan, their auditor's report will read like this word for word, exactly. If you looked at the Treasury's website, you would see that. So what you really need to know is what did the auditors need to do or what corrections needed to be made in order to allow us to give that opinion. The reason for that is the state won't accept anything other than that clean or unmodified opinion. We'll get to that a little bit later, but I think there's a couple things that are key to know also on that report. The third section that's in bold there talks about a change in accounting principle. That's one of the more significant changes in governmental accounting that's happened in the last 5 or 10 years. The city leases something like 14 or 16 trucks that happened right at the end of your fiscal year. So we helped with that. And then at the very bottom, it talks about responsibilities and management. I think it's very important for all of you to know that even though we prepared this 94-page document for you, it's ultimately the responsibility of management to prepare the financial statements as well as related to internal controls or your checks and balances over recording transactions and balances. And then getting back to the clean opinion, I'd like to refer to the second auditor's report, and that goes back to page 73. We really spaced those reports out on you, but not every government gets this report. It's a report in compliance with government auditing standards. That might sound like something that every government should comply with, but it's only required if you get federal funding, which you have, and it relates to a couple of large loan balances that are related to projects a couple of years ago. So this report talks about internal controls and compliance and refers to a schedule of findings on page 75. On page 75, we have to report any internal control deficiencies that we come across. That whole page is dedicated to what we called a deficiency related to material audit adjustments and the fact that we prepare your financials. Really, the most important thing I can tell you about this is virtually every government in the state of Michigan has this finding, because I wouldn't expect the city of Allegan to prepare this document on their own, and that's really what the expectation is. The standards that are set by the Audit Standards Board apply to both large publicly traded companies as well as the city of Allegan. So I think it's an unfair expectation for the city or other small governments in the state of Michigan to do everything perfectly. So we audit 120 governments. Probably all but 5 or 6 of them don't get this comment because there are always going to be some adjustments that we have to record. So getting back to what were the significant things that we had to correct in order to give that unmodified opinion. And towards the top of that page, you'll see 5 bullet points. That's really a listing of the material audit adjustments. The first and the third relate to capital assets and capitalizing them and depreciating them. Those are adjustments that we've made for many years, and we do for almost every single one of our governments. That's a decision that management has made that they'd rather have us handle that as opposed to doing that internally, and there's a cost-benefit analysis being done there. So that's an expectation. The second one that I skipped over relates to capitalizing those leased assets and liabilities I mentioned, a new audit standard, a new accounting standard that applied this year. And then the fourth bullet point talks about one additional payable that we picked up. Only one. We may have looked at hundreds or 1,000 transactions or more, and all of those were recorded in the correct accounting period with the exception of one material one. So most of the governments I work with, they let us do that. They want us to find all of them and record them. Here, Tracy and her team record all of them, and she missed one. So, and other than that, all of the transactions were recorded correctly. So I will tell you that's a relatively short list of adjustments for a government your size. Tracy and her team have done a nice job. Then going back to a couple comments on the financial condition, a couple pages to look at. First one is page 15. Page 15 is a balance sheet or a picture at a point in time of your financial position of your governmental funds. Your primary governmental fund is the general fund. That's your primary operating fund. The key thing to look at there is the third row from the bottom that's labeled unassigned fund balance. It's an amount just a little over $4 million. You have a $4 million unassigned fund balance in general fund. In the 20 years I've been working with the city, that's the highest I've seen. It represents 95% of your current year's expenditures. Most cities in the state are at 15 to 20%. So I would say you're not excessive, but that's a very healthy fund balance. But I also know management has a plan to have already spent a lot of that and, or will be spending that in the future. It's just really nice to see such a healthy fund balance. Nothing wrong with that these days. The next 2 columns are your street funds, almost $1 million set aside for streets. And then the very unique thing that the city of Allegan has with your 2 capital project funds, nearly $3 million sitting there with the approval of citizens to spend on capital projects if they give you that approval. Those are the governmental funds. Just a couple comments on your business type activities. On page 19, it's what we call a statement of net position, or it's a balance sheet for your proprietary funds, and those are your sewer, water, and motor pool funds. Here again, I'll just point out one number. Second row from the bottom is called unrestricted net position. That's your equity that's available to be spent. The sewer fund has about 1.8 million. Water fund is 934,000. Those are adequate fund balances, certainly not excessive, just as Tracy and I were talking about. Significant repair or replacement could wipe out $1 million very easily in that water fund. But at least that number is positive. A number of cities I work with, that number is a negative number. We'll skip over to page 21. It's a statement of cash flows. This is the statement that any small business owner would go to first because they want to see how are my operations generating cash flow. The first subtotal shows that positive cash flows are being provided by operating activities. What that tells you is the first number is what you're charging your customers, that's cash collected from them, less all the operating expenses. You have positive cash flow from operations in the sewer fund of about 1.7 million, 921,000 in the water fund. Now, some of that has to be used to pay for debt service costs, principal and interest on debt, and so that cash actually went down in both of those funds this year, but that was primarily because of 500,000 and 700,000 of capital asset acquisitions in those funds. Otherwise, charges are more than sufficient to cover your operating costs and debt service costs. So if I could summarize, you have very good people on your accounting team doing very good work. The financial condition of the city and its various funds is really healthy. The city is probably in as good a financial position as I've seen in the 20 years that I've been here. So be happy to answer any questions that you have now or at any time throughout the year. If you have questions, we're always available. Anything that we could help explain better or help you understand. We don't want you to see us here for a few minutes tonight or for a few days during the audit. We're always available.
Thank you very much. Council, did you have any questions at all or need clarification on any of the documents, Dave?
A question on a topic we've discussed here a couple times. With the cities that you work with, do you see any good examples of managing the ongoing maintenance costs for infrastructure, forecasting for infrastructure costs?
That's an excellent question, Dave. I think, unfortunately, with the municipalities that we work with, they're probably your size or smaller for the most part. And too often, they're thinking about 1 year at a time or maybe a couple years out. So I think it's wise, and I know you all are thinking more about the future. So with all of the infrastructure you have, it's very wise to think about what those costs might be. I do have some clients that do a very good job of that. One in particular, you wouldn't think a cemetery would be that big of an infrastructure cost, but they actually have taken part of the cemetery fees such that they've set aside $500,000 for future maintenance of that cemetery, which seems like a lot, but that's really important to them, and they've made an effort to do that. So with all of the infrastructure you have here, I think it's wise. It'd be a complicated task with the engineers almost having to be involved with, say, your sewer and water infrastructure, all of the things that go into that, and being able to tell you what needs to be repaired or replaced in what period of time. But I think it's a very wise discussion to have.
Is there anywhere you could recommend to go to find best practices for doing that?
That's a great question. Let me get back to you on that and see if at the moment, I can't think of any place to direct you to, but I might be able to find something like that.
Great, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank
let me
you.
do that.
Thanks, Dave. Did anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay. Tracy, did you have anything you'd like to add now?
I would just like to say I still enjoy working with Dan, and, I appreciate his feedback on all the stuff even throughout the year that I have questions on, like the new GASB 87.
There's always new ones. It's hard to keep track.
But no, I think this year went good, and told him that I'm excited for when these projects come through, how that all's gonna work out, so, thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. So next on tonight's agenda, we have a presentation from MERS.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Mike. Thank you very much for having me. I think you've got a copy of this. It has the fun logo on it. So thank you for having me. I'll work to keep my comments brief here as well. It's nice to be able to follow in Dan's footsteps because I think we had a similar layout to our approach. I'll say I also appreciate the relationship with the city. The city of Allegan has been a member of the MERS system for about 31 years now. I've worked with the city for a little over 17 years that I've been with MERS, and Joel and Tracy are great, and there's been changes, and there's always things happening, especially when it comes to a pension plan. So whether it's at the state level or federal level, or just changes that council wants to make to the plan, collective bargaining, what have you. So a great team here, so I appreciate the relationship. What I put together in this packet that you have already is sort of a summary of the defined benefit pension plan specifically. The city has both defined benefit, the traditional pension plan, and a 401A defined contribution plan. So this is focusing solely on the defined benefit plan. That's always the plan that gets the most interest from everyone. And I won't go through everything here, but hopefully if you are bored later this evening and want to, refresh yourself or look back through some of those things, hopefully it paints a whole picture for you. So I'll pass the MERS commercial on page 2, and I'll start with the information starting on page 3, just to share 2 quick perspectives here. With the defined benefit plan, there's, of course, the participant perspective, someone who's in the plan, and then the plan responsibility, so the city's obligation to the employees who are in this plan. So for a participant, just briefly, the plan benefit comes from a 3-part formula, and you can see that on page 3. It's the red box. There's 3 component pieces. There's what we call a final average compensation. That's your wages earned over a period of time. We take that times the service credit that individuals earn, so basically as a full-time employee, and generally this is the police department. If you work 160 hours in the month, you earn service credit. Months add up and you have years and decades in some cases of service. And then you multiply that times a benefit multiplier, which generally speaking is 2.5%. And the multiplier represents how much of the final average compensation an individual will get in their retirement for each year that they work for the city of Allegan. And there's some other plan features as well. Your plan is mostly closed, meaning that individuals who are in the plan remain in the plan, but new hires of the city in the police department come into the 401A defined contribution plan. To quantify, to give you an example of what that benefit might look like, this is not a particular person. I just wanted to give you a feel for what the numbers might look like. Page 4 showed the math, just showing what a benefit might look like for someone that had a final average compensation as shown, had 25 years of service. You can see sort of how that all comes together. And the key piece with the defined benefit plan is this plan promises that, in this example, this monthly benefit for as long as you are alive. And there are options to give payments to a spouse, to a significant other. That's a sort of a family unit decision, but it is a benefit that you cannot outlive. So it is a very nice benefit. Very straightforward, I think, from the participant standpoint. If you flip perspective and look at it from the city's standpoint, that's really going to move into page 5, and this is just sort of the highlights that I wanted to share with council tonight. Page 5, just a quick participant summary. At the end of 2020 and the end of 2021, December 31st, 2021 was our most recent data set. So you can see at the end of that year, just going right to the bottom on page 5, we had 8 active employees in the plan actively participating. We had 3 what we call vested former members, so former employees of the city of Allegan, worked enough time to be promised a benefit. They're just not old enough to draw it yet, but they will someday when they put in their retirement application. And then we had 10 retirees or the beneficiary of a former retiree of the city of Allegan. So for a total of 21 total covered lives, So very stable from the end of 2020 to the end of 2021. We will update all of our data when this year closes and then deliver a whole new report to the city in the springtime of 2023. That's what's coming next year. So I gotta check myself on that sometimes. Moving over to page 6, with the defined benefit plan, we're promising a lifetime benefit. The scales analogies just, I think, summarizes it really well. On the right-hand side of the scales, you're looking at the page or your screen, you've got a promise made by the city, and there's a dollar value associated with that promise. And then to offset or to pay that promise, there's the assets in the plan, and that's represented by the scale, the left-hand side of the scale. So the goal with any pension plan ultimately is to get it to a position where the scales are in balance or we're at 100% funded. So moving over to page 7, there's a lot of discussion, and this is an ongoing discussion that takes place not just at the state level, but really nationwide. What if my scales aren't in balance? What if my plan is offset? What if my liabilities weigh more than the assets? And if your plan is underfunded? So the city of Allegan actually has an underfunded plan at the end of 2021. That's the bold box there that you see at the bottom of the page. So for 12/31/2021, we are at a 70% funded level, which is up 3% from where it was at the end of 2020. Another way of looking at 70%, which is really it's a strong position. It's not the best position, but you are on a path to get to that fully funded position. And I'll share with you, sort of how we're going to get there in a moment. But another way of looking at 70% funded is for every dollar that is promised as of this moment in time to everybody that's in that plan. So we've got retirees who are drawing the benefit now, but then we have active employees who, they will someday be retirees, but they're not drawing the benefit now. So there's 70 cents in the account to pay for everybody right now. But some people are using the money and other folks are going to be working for a while until they make good on that claim and actually ride off into the sunset. So in other words, we do have some time, but we do have to bring the scales into balance over time. Excuse me. To give you a feel for sort of how the city stacks up across all of the other local units of government that are in the MERS system, MERS is just in Michigan only. I've got that sideways bell curve, if you will, on the top of page 8. So you'll note that the city is one of 172 municipal entities that fall in that 70 to 79% range. So it's literally the top of the bell curve, which is not the top level, but not a bad place. Not a bad place to be either. In the interest of time, I will move on from page 8, and then I'll share with you that. So really the key things I think to know about the plan, any defined benefit plan, is where are you funded? And we're funded at 70%. How much are our contributions going to be for the following year? And then probably the biggest picture is, where are we headed? What's it look like our plan is going? Is our scales tipping more out of balance, or are they becoming more in balance? And depending on what that trend looks like, leads you to take certain actions or not. So we know our funding level. At the bottom of page 9, lots of detail goes into this, but every year our actuaries analyze the entire MERS system, and they also analyze the city of Allegan's unique situation. So, the details of your plan, the men and women that are in your plan, how much money's in the plan, and they come up with very specific calculations for every category or classification of employees that you have. And so at the bottom of page 9, where it says Table 1, you can see contribution rates effective July 1, 2023. I apologize, that's sort of small. But if you can read that, you can see the annual contribution to the tune of about $290,000. That again kicks in July 1st of next year. So that's 1 year's requirement. And then continuing over onto page 10, I just wanted to give you a feel for sort of how the plan has matured or evolved over time. So employees have contributed to the plan, the city contributes to the plan, the money is sent over to MERS, we're in West Lansing. We invest the city's money along with all of the other local units of government that are in MERS. Huge portfolio, about $14.5 billion. And then investments play a critical role in bringing money into this plan as well. So the table 5 that you see at the bottom of page 10, I just highlighted the most recent year, 2021, just to give you a feel for sort of money in, money out. So you can see the required contributions by the city, $250,000 plus. Few additional contributions, what employees have put in the employee contribution column, what investment income brought to the table in each of those years. And then you can also see benefit payments, which I think is an interesting one to look at. If you look at 2011, the benefit payments to city retirees were less than half of what they are today. So the plan is maturing, but that's expected. Folks do want to work and they do want to retire and draw their benefits, so that's expected, and that's a part of our calculations. And our whole goal here, again, is to bring the scales in balance to make sure that what's been promised by the city can be met by an equal level of dollars. So moving over to page 11, and I'm almost to the end here, I promise. I keep saying this, our goal is to bring the scales in balance. One of the things that the MERS elected board does on a recurring, regular basis is look at all of the assumptions that we use to determine what your plan costs are. We're always looking at those, we're looking at the data, and we're projecting out what we think will happen to ensure that the assumptions that we're using are based in reality. So a quick example of that, we're over time, life expectancies have increased. MERS has been around now for almost 80 years. Life expectancy in the 1940s is not what it is today. So if we were expecting everyone to live till, 61 and 65 in retirement, that wouldn't be an accurate assumption. Just like we're not going to assume that everyone's going to live to 100. And those are, extremes. But as things have changed and evolved, we make sure that our methodologies and assumptions change as well to ensure that we're putting aside the correct amount of money so that over time the benefit can be fulfilled, the promise can be made. So I think from council's standpoint, these last 2 pages are really important. Page 12 is a 6-year contribution and funding level projection. So you can see the funding percentage as of today at 70. You can see the estimated city contribution around 294,000. And then looking 5 years out, we can see the funding level anticipated to go up. We can also see the corresponding city contribution. So I like that trend in the short time, in the short term, gives you, sort of some good detail there. But I think from council's perspective, I like the information on page 13 even better. That's more of a bird's eye view of the plan. And there's a lot going on there, so excuse the red arrows, which was me trying to call attention to certain things. So to orient you very quickly, the top graph is a projection of funded percentage over time. The vertical line in the year 2040 represents the longest time frame that it will take for a local unit of government to move their plan to a fully funded position. The horizontal green line at 60% is the mark that I'll just say you want to stay above a 60% funded ratio. Otherwise, there's a lot more work that you have to do with the State of Michigan Department of Treasury. So that's sort of put in there just as a benchmark to say, hey, are we above or below that mark? The number that your calculations are based on is the line, I should say, is the solid blue line that you see there, thus the red arrow pointing it. So we're at about 70% today, and we're trending up to that 2040 date to when we're going to reach the full 100% funded position. Now, to get to that funded position, then we look at the second graph here at the bottom of the page. That's the city contribution projections over time. So again, focus on that solid blue line. You can see, generally speaking, contributions being around in that $300,000 range. Then you see a dramatic drop-off in the year 2040. That coincides with when the scales are supposed to be in balance at that point. At that point, we're not anticipated to be paying any legacy debt. We're not anticipated to be underfunded. We'll just be paying the year-to-year costs of the plan on a moving forward basis. As a segue, just quickly here, have worked with Joel and Tracy just in the exploratory phases to consider, and it's just in a consideration phase at this moment, potentially extending somewhat the payoff timeframe, so beyond the 2040 a little bit, to lower the dollar amount that would be required on an annual basis so that you could potentially have more budget flexibility to provide some, free up some funds for some other areas. So it's something that administration was considering, so I just wanted to, if that hadn't been brought up before, just to mention that. I don't know if Joel wanted to add anything to that.
No, Mike, is there anything else you wanted to highlight in your presentation?
No, that was it. But overall, I think the plan is in good shape. You've closed it, all except for the chief of police. So you're moving in a positive direction. It's not going to get there overnight, but it is going to get there. We've got you on a path, and you're in a good spot.
So tonight, we wanted to bring in the audit and Mike from MERS to give council a chance to hear from both what I call our outside financial people. Just to reiterate what Dan mentioned, financially, our picture's good. We're in a good spot. With the MERS, it's the only active employees is our police department. For fiscal year 23 that we're in right now, we budgeted and set aside $330,000. Our minimum, what MERS says we have to contribute is $294. So we're above $40,000 already, or $36,000 above where we, should be, which is positive. The 60%, just for, more detail for council, if we fall below 60%, then we have more reporting to do with the Treasury. We have more conversations to do with the Treasury. And we have to dig in a little bit deeper in how we allocate our state revenue sharing payments because they don't want us to become underfunded. Even though we're underfunded, that's the kind of level. And I would also want to remind council that in the most recent union negotiations, every bargaining unit that gets the defined benefits, so our patrol officers and our command officers through the police department, has to contribute anything that's more than 10%. So they're in line more or less with the contribution level of where we are with our existing, all other employees. So we've taken some strides to kind of shore up the city's fiscal position when it comes to this retirement and defined benefit program. It's nothing that, staff gets excited to do when we're talking about people's retirement, but we have to look long-term for the city's, fiscal health. And if we do that 5-year stretch, it will still keep us well north of the 60%. We'll still be north of the 70% funded, but it will probably free up, an additional, $40,000 a year for us for other projects that might be needed in the downtown. So that's something we are discussing. We don't have to make a decision right now. We have to make a decision in the next month. But as we get into next year's budget discussion, it's something we are going to have, some longer discussions with council about. That's all I have to add. And thank
Thanks,
you,
Joel.
Mike, and thank you, Dan, very much.
Thank you, Mike. Council, did you have any questions at all regarding the presentation?
I do want to
Dave?
clarify one point. There's the picture of the employer making contribution to the fund and the employees making contribution to the fund. Is the employee contribution only coming from our one employee who's on defined benefit now?
No, so any employee in the police department who is active in the plan. So let me run back, and I apologize, I may have said that incorrectly. Back to page 5. So at the end of 2021, there were 8 active individuals. So depending on the division that they're in, you've got your, police patrol, your chief of police, they contribute that dollar amount as Joel described. So then there's a total pie, if you will, and then it's sort of how you slice the pie. So the employees have a share of that, and then the city has the remainder of that. So it's all of the active employees. But once you have departed the plan, then no contributions from the employees.
So if I'm understanding correctly, at some point, the last employee that's on defined benefit will retire, and at that point, the employee contributions will end. It will only be employer contributions.
Yeah, well, actually, once they depart employment. So it could be that they've retired or they've departed.
They took a
just
new job in a
left.
different community.
Yeah.
Are your projections accounting for that to happen?
Yeah, so when we do the projections, it's very focused in on the demographic makeup of the employees of the city. So there's certain assumptions that we'll make about what we expect to happen to them. They'll say, well, okay, we've got 8 individuals here, and the likelihood, especially as police officers who are longer serving, the likelihood is much higher that those gentlemen are going to stay and work and draw their benefit. But there's always the possibility that life could take somebody in a different spot. Someone may leave, and they may not, they may walk away from the entire system and not draw a benefit. But it's very much based on the anticipated behavior based on past experience, but specifically for the group of folks that you have now, including even things like life expectancy. So, as a group, there's probably an average age, generally speaking, that everyone's going to live until, on average, and collect that benefit. But how that applies to any one retiree, one person might exceed that significantly, but then another person might fall short of that level. But as a whole, as a group for the city, we're anticipating targeting a certain number, and if on average we hit that number collectively, then we're setting aside enough money for the group, if that helps a little.
It's still not clear to me. So we've got one employee that's in our defined benefit plan right now that's still working.
No.
No, sorry, the sheriff is the only plan that is still active or open, meaning if the sheriff, and I know there's more detail to it, but if the sheriff left, and you hired me as the sheriff, I would come into that plan, in theory. All of the other classifications of employees for the police department, the officers who have the defined benefit plan, they have it. But if you hired me as a police officer, I would come into the defined contribution plan. So we sort of closed the door, And if you have defined benefit, you keep it. But if you're hired newly at the city, you don't get this type of plan. Unless you're the
yeah.
chief. Yes,
So
yes,
our
thank you,
police
thank you.
chief, he has a defined benefit until he turns age 50. Then per the contract, he has to switch to defined contribution. Our 2 sergeants, that's called a command officer unit. They both are on defined benefit, but that is now closed. Our patrol officers, they are on defined benefit, and that is closed. And then all new officers we hire, they go on to our defined contribution, just like all other city employees.
At some point, will we stop collecting employee contributions for a defined benefit plan?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Once you no longer have any active employees in the plan.
And
So-
that could be triggered if our chief leaves or retires or is no longer employed for some reason by the city of Allegan.
Yeah, if he's no longer active here, or any of those other classifications that Joel just mentioned, the command or the patrol, anytime they are no longer actively receiving a paycheck from the city of Allegan, then they would not be in this plan, and then they would not be contributing to the plan either.
Does your projection between now and 2040 account for that happening?
A slight chance that it might happen with maybe one individual, because we've got a small group of individuals here, only 8. And they're longer-serving employees, so the odds, the winds, it's a sort of a tailwind. It's likely that they're going to, continue to work, but it's not guaranteed that all 100% are. So we're making assumptions about what we expect to happen to that group, without knowing for sure. So, and I'm not an actuary, but if I had to quantify it, with 8 active employees, I'd say there's an expectation that 7 of them are going to continue on working at the city and meet retirement eligibility and then ride off into the sunset as a City of Allegan retiree. And maybe 1 won't make it, for whatever reason, or they're going to leave, prior to becoming retirement eligible. So because the key piece with this is we're promising a lifetime benefit, and this sounds silly, but, without the crystal ball. So we're trying to set aside enough money to pay a lifetime benefit, but not knowing, well, how long is that person going to live? When exactly is that person going to retire? Because even if the door to retirement is open, some people walk out day 1, but then other people will, maybe an officer says, well, I want to work for another year for the city. I want to work 6 months, so we're trying to anticipate the behavior of the participants without knowing for sure. But we always err on the side of conservatism to ensure that we're, putting enough money into the plan. And this is really big picture stuff. But in the future, and this is nowhere close now, but in the future, when there are no active employees, at some point there will be no active employees in the plan, and there will only be retirees in Allegan's defined benefit plan. And then even further out, there will be no retirees in the plan. Everyone who was in the plan has passed away, and if there are funds left in the account at that time, it is always the City of Allegan's funds. So then if there's excess, if you will, those funds come back to the City of Allegan without any financial strings attached. They're yours to use in the general fund as you see fit. I don't know if that's a lot. I apologize. It's a lot, but I don't know if that helps a little. But there is a day. You've shut the plan down, essentially, and so it will come to an end. It just takes time as active employees finish their active working career, become retirees, and then retirees ultimately pass away.
And Dave, the only thing that I would probably add to what Mike said is that every year this actuary evaluation happens. So say in 5 years, for some reason, half of them do leave. I mean, they're looking at it every year and making assumptions based on each individual person in the plan or division, their age, and, and what's happening.
Do we have 8 employees currently in the defined benefits plan?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
the chief, then we have 2 command officers or sergeants, and then, 5 other police officers.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on page 5.
Yep.
Page 5, table 3. 1 chief, 2 command, patrol, if you will. Yeah, and that's a great point. Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah.
That's this report that I put together for you is me trying to take actuarial stuff and maybe make it a little bit easier with some visuals. There is a full actuarial report, an annual report that comes out, as Tracy mentions, and so we're always updating this on an annual basis, because things do change. So it's not sort of set it and forget it, it's set
It's
it
not,
for this year.
yeah, it's not just a one-time actuary evaluation, and then it's that until 2040. So every year, they're recalculating this, and in the budget and in our audit and in the actuarial evaluation that comes through, it explains what the assumptions are that they make, and I list those out. And I'll make sure during the budget to just point that out so that you can see and I have the history. So every year we've gotten it, I've explained what the assumptions are that they use.
I understand, yeah.
I mean, because
I've
there's
seen-
interest rate things, age things,
Yeah,
so many different variables that change the numbers.
Thank you for clarifying that there are 8 employees currently in the defined benefit plan.
Yes.
That was the part that was unclear to me.
Okay, no, you're welcome. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
think I might goofed out when I got to that part
That's
there,
okay.
so my apologies.
Were there any other questions, council? I think this is the highest that I have seen that, like the percentage-wise, since I've been on council. So,
Possible. I think at one point it was at 76, but that's the other thing too. Next year, something crazy could
Yeah.
happen and we could be under 60% if something really crazy happened, but
it's good to see that
normally,
it's going,
normally when they do those, we're going up. But we were at 76 at one point, but then there was some assumptions that changed one year that brought us back under,
I think it was after Recorder retired.
oh yeah, that could be too. And yeah, we had a bunch of people retire.
all right, wonderful. Now, I do recall that the state was contemplating, Tracy's nodding her head, some sort of bill or something to help with those that are underfunded. Have we heard?
Under 60%.
Oh, it's under 60%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So you
Well,
have to be a failure.
I guess
And then you get help.
Well, I guess we're good then. Darn it. No, I'm kidding. Awesome. Thank you for your report.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Next, we've got a presentation from the HDC Study Group.
Good evening. We come as a united front. So you've all received a bunch of information in your packets with regard to the roads we've traveled and the studies we've done. And really, it comes down to a step back and look at what's in existence, what might need to be taken place moving forward, and the steps that we've taken. I'm sorry, I was caught by that screenshot. That's pretty good. So what we've given as a final recommendation, and this was after several months of studies, compiling information, speaking with the public, and combining that information, it comes down to 3 major points. One being that the ordinance to be updated, if you will, or revamped, whichever word you'd like to use. But it would be geared more toward, I like to say, a relaxing of some of the guidelines so that it's more homeowner participation and cooperation and team, if you will, within our community. So when the ordinance is rewritten, one of the requirements or requests would be that a home going for a building permit within a historical district would have to present to the Historic Commission, before receiving their actual building permit. So that would entail some cooperation with both PCI, with city staff, and the HDC as well. Another goal or point of attention would be the communication, the community involvement, engaging the community in more of an outreach type of way, such as instructions on different ways of keeping and maintaining your historical home, and really setting a foundation so that our city of Allegan, our town of Allegan, can maintain the charm that it has. So I did a quick and brief overview. We definitely would like to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for this report. It was extremely comprehensive. There was a lot of really detailed and great information, so I appreciate all the time and effort that the HDC Study Group, and then those community members put into getting that together. I just have a couple questions. First one that I've got is about the building permit. So what would be an example, let's say, of when someone needs a building permit? So it wouldn't be necessarily like windows, doors, roofs, like what would be an example of something that would need to come in front of the HDC then?
So it would be something to the effect of like changing the size of windows, taking off a porch or putting on a porch or a large addition onto a house or something that's going to alter the structure, the structural integrity of the house. So that would be the projects that we would look to approve or disapprove.
Ultimately, something that would require a permit for anyway. If you're doing an addition off the house, you're gonna have to get a permit for that. Simply, we would want to make sure that there's continuity with that addition to the existing home or the community as a whole kind of thing.
So more of like a structural modification, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was in attendance at one of the meetings, and there was a home that was lost to fire, and they came before HDC because they were rebuilding, and then there was a conversation because there really wasn't anything that, when there was a rebuild, there wasn't anything in the ordinance for that, but that would require a permit, correct? So like if they were to come forward again, would you then just kind of say, well, we don't really have any authority over that?
No,
So the historicalness of a home is lost once total
Okay.
loss happens to a home. That is agreed upon. What really, in one of the discussions with SHPO, this I believe was after this incident, kind of a one-off. I can't say if it's ever happened to me on the board, this situation before. So after that was brought up with SHPO, and what we've learned with SHPO is that even though a home has lost all historicalness, the district itself might maintain some historicalness.
Okay,
So if you were to lose the old Delano Inn, that community still has historicalness of certain types of architecture in that area. That being, it would be expected to kind of still preserve that charmness, that quaintness of the town kind of thing. So that's something that we have learned throughout this whole process on something like that.
okay.
I think we would be less focused on the preservation of each individual structure as opposed to preservation of the districts as a whole. Like we mentioned in our final recommendation is this charm and quaintness. That seemed to be kind of a unanimous thing that everyone who attended our meetings was interested in preserving. They didn't care so much about the siding or whether you had vinyl windows or wood windows. The main thing was they came to Allegan, this is speaking from the individuals who moved to the area, but they came to Allegan and really liked it because of its charm and quaintness. And I think that that's where we could have our biggest impact is preserving that, and we would do that through preserving the districts as a whole, not the individual structures.
Okay, so as far as preserving the districts, is it then the recommendation of the HDC to maintain the districts as they are? Like with the amount of homes? I know that has come up a few times from me too.
At this point, yes, it's a two-pronged approach here. So there are some things that can happen immediately, and there's things that need to happen further down the road, kind of thing. As of right now, the districts would stay as they are. Down the road, districts, properties will need to be reevaluated just to determine the original 1984, I believe it was, survey that they did on it was very vague. According to SHPO, he's not sure how that even went through, because it literally just says American Foursquare. It just says 1800s home, 1900s home, 1960s home. It's very, very vague. There needs to be a reevaluation of homes, the districts, that gives more specifics as to what the districts are, as a whole, are doing and what each home is doing. So right now, the districts would not change, but down the road, that would be something that would need to be evaluated. Just because that is a time and cost, there's time and cost involved into it. It would not be a rewrite the ordinance next month, we're doing an evaluation kind of thing.
So one last question for me, and then I'll open it.
There you go.
Sorry. As far as what your meetings would then look like, is it just meeting on an as-needed basis then, rather than having it outlined, like in the ordinance as far as when you were to
Yeah,
meet?
so we would maintain our monthly meetings.
Okay.
We would still do that. Those monthly meetings would be more focused on the community outreach section of our goals. With this new direction or new ordinance that would be happening, the need for approval would dramatically decrease. Mind you, we have had 3 HDC regular meetings, and there have been 0 applications so far. So that wouldn't happen very often, but one of the things we were thinking of was, in order to get more of a connection with the community, we would take these meetings on, or these approval projects as they come in. So we would get, notice from PCI, we would get information, hey, this is happening, you guys need to weigh in on this. We would have 1 week to set a time, have a meeting. We've even talked about, visiting the actual structures and talking to the homeowners there, or doing something of that nature. But when it comes to the approval process, it would just be on an as-needed basis.
Thank you. Did anyone else have any questions for the group? Peter?
Yeah, it's a couple questions. So it's step 1 is rewrite ordinance to eliminate the need for approval when replacing or repairing exterior features. I think that's already kind of there in our ordinance, but I think the only difference in that is saying that you could use modern materials is the difference.
Correct.
So it just removes that part of the historic preservation. How does that work with SHPO and the historic?
SHPO's
Can we set those?
response to us about, wood for wood, whatever it happened to be, it's not SHPO's, it's the city's responsibility to determine what we want to preserve.
So what level of preservation we
What level
want?
of preservation we choose we want to. So if we want to do wood windows for wood windows, that's something that we can choose. If we just want to maintain the aesthetic charm and quaintness of something, we can set that too.
Okay. Then I saw the second was the building permits. I thought that already happened with PCI. If somebody goes for a building permit in an HDC, they're told they have to go get approval from HDC. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's traditionally what I've seen as the process, so.
Part of that, a little bit more in-depth, is that we would be able to receive and obtain the information that was provided for that permit. With the example that Ms. Mayor brought up, the person or people may have gone to PCI, but we only had a snapshot of, what their proposal was. I think we're looking at more near the end of, or just before, the permit would be granted. The whole floor plan, the whole site plan type of thing would come before the HDC and get that approval.
But if it's
Does that
right
make
before
sense?
the end of it,
I mean, the end before, not before occupancy, but before.
no, I'm saying if it's
they're
right before
issued
the end of it,
building
you're
permit.
gonna have some very upset people if they come in and all of a sudden you tell them you can't do this, 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 or this, because they've now invested all that in all those plans, so I would
the way that
be,
this would go would be, and the reason we've kind of structured it this way is because we heard a lot from the community about how difficult our application process was or seemed to them. So our goal is to minimize that feeling and kind of just streamline the process. So our goal would be to receive the information that was given for the building permit. We could just take that information without, having to make the structure owner fill out an application. We could do the approval process just from that. So it'd be real fast, real simple. You apply for your building permit, we get the information, we make a ruling right then and there. It's not something where, you're getting into the project and then, way down the road, we're like, oh yeah, by the way. It wouldn't be like that.
No.
When I saw, the last one was demolition ordinance, we already have that, I believe, so.
Yes, but
Are we modifying it in some way,
I
or?
don't think that includes the HDC.
Yeah, it does.
It does.
It's specific, actually, to the HDC about demolishing, as well as demolishing through neglect. That if you neglect the structure, we can actually go in and make those repairs to bring it back to HDC standards currently, I believe, under our ordinance 13. Is it chapter 13, right?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm talking to the three representatives from the HDC. I think what you're saying is you want to make it a little bit clearer. If you plan on demolishing the Jade Estate Inn, you gotta get approval first from the HDC before you get a demo permit. Because a demo permit from PCI to demo a building in the city of Allegan is you just fill out the permit and prove that you've disconnected the utilities and
Yeah, that's that part of it, but it's not
away
taking
you go.
into.
The demolition by neglect would be if somebody owns a historic building and says, well, I don't want to make these improvements, so I'm just not going to invest at all into my building, and I'm going to just let it deteriorate over time. And as it deteriorates, it loses its historic significance, and therefore I can have an argument that it's not a historic building anymore. The last time the HDC took a stance was on the Triangle Building, the Flatiron Building, I believe it's 142 Brady, with that previous, Elliot Johnson was the owner at that time, and she wasn't addressing the doors. She put up plywood over the doors, and the HDC sent a memo or enforcement letter saying,
Actually, it's
you can't do
just
that.
section 13.6, demolition or moving historic structure. It's not just through neglect, it's literally the
Yeah.
HDC is supposed to make an approval, so that might just be an issue with PCI, that if they get a demolition permit, a request for a permit, they have to check it against our historic district and
Which they
advise
do.
them. And then,
Which they
yeah,
do.
So that's what I mean, I'm just saying we already have it. That's why I was just wondering if it was a difference in the process or a difference, because currently that's how it's supposed to work, is you get the demolition permit. If it's in HDC, they're supposed to be told, well, you have to put in an application with the HDC to get the permit for demolish, not just disconnect utilities. So I'm just trying to see what changes are being done here.
We're just trying to eliminate the application. We just want to make sure that PCI is actually enforcing their side of it on this one.
Trying to streamline it and make it easier for the applicant and the structure owner within each historic district.
I have a
Anything
question.
else?
What do you mean
Go
by
ahead, Bill.
quaint and charm? That's a term that can be different from each person.
Sure.
So what do you, who's gonna determine that? You, the committee, or what?
Actually, it's part of the survey would help determine that as well, once we get to that point. But, go ahead, I'm sorry, I kind of
No,
jumped in.
that's
on
okay, that's okay. Yeah, the charm and quaintness, I can understand, you seeing that as, something that can differ from person to person.
Correct.
What we kind of understand, and those are the words that we chose to describe this, but a lot of people were talking about, the town has an old town feel. I've heard so many times about, and I can't think of the name of the town, but in the TV show, Allegan's always referred to it as a.
Mayberry.
Mayberry, thank you, from
Andy Griffith.
Andy Griffith, there we go.
You're
so-
talking my time now.
So it's that, a town that kind of harkens back to a previous day.
Okay.
It's not our downtown doesn't have that hustle and bustle of downtown Grand Rapids, So our goal would be to preserve those aspects of these structures and these districts that really speak to that quietness, that old town, that sort of thing.
Well, I understand that, but how are you going to put that into wording so that other people can understand that. Bring that feeling. I mean, I know what you're saying, and I agree with you. That's one of the beauties behind our community, but.
You know, I don't have an answer for you on that. I don't know how to define it exactly, and I can see us spending a lot of time working on that in our meetings.
I think this harkens back to more the community involvement and trying to, because a part of that community involvement is not just going to be like, oh, we're setting up a tuck pointing class, but it's engaging the community, going out there and trying to share some of the aspects of what houses we have here, whether that's through quarterly newsletter, something to that effect. You know, trying to instill what that charming quaintness is in the community. It is a very vague concept. It's just like saying what's old and what's historic. That's a very vague concept. We have a lot of old houses. Are all of our old houses historic, though? We've determined that this charm and quaintness of Allegan is what, coming from all these different meetings we've had, speaking to the community, it's the charm and quaintness, the feel of the town is what they want to maintain. And I get it, that's gonna ebb and flow throughout the years. But it's our role as the historic district to engage them, to show them what the charm and quaintness is of the community. And yes, we're gonna come and, members are gonna come and go, and they're gonna be showing different charms and quaintnesses of the community. That's just something that's gonna evolve year after year, member after member kind of thing.
I think it really speaks to the point of our need to engage more with the community, because we only want to preserve the things that the community wants to preserve. And up until now, there weren't real clear discussions on what the community really wanted. So when it comes to us doing that sort of outreach, we'll be looking to answer those questions. What do you guys want to preserve? You know, what is it about Cutler Street that's so special to you? Those sorts of questions. Does that help at all?
Yeah. It's a tough one to figure out.
It is.
Did anyone else have any other questions? for the group?
Just
Go ahead,
one.
Peter.
The material question is gonna become still a stickler in the end, I have a feeling, because if somebody says, I wanna put vinyl siding where there was wood siding, what are you guys gonna say? You know,
We're not going to say anything because they wouldn't need to ask.
do I need to ask, so they can just put vinyl?
That's correct. It's got to be aesthetically appropriate, but modern materials are just fine. That doesn't require any sort of approval.
What about changing siding, say 8-inch to 4-inch or whatever? That, because they're making a change there on the siding, still putting siding, you know, that's.
Yeah, we would have to make a determination on whether that was aesthetically appropriate or not.
So,
And so we'd kind of leave it open like that, so that one thing we recognized in our research that we lacked a lot was a lot of voluntary compliance. You weren't getting people that were just like, hey, I want your guys' help. I want to know, am I okay to do this? Would this be historically appropriate? But we want to kind of leave it out there, like, with that question of, is this historically, aesthetically appropriate? And then get the people to ask their own questions of that. Is this siding appropriate? And then, you know, if they have questions, they can come to us and get that sort of voluntary partnership with the community that we so desperately need.
So in that way, it'd be more of an advisory board rather than a regulatory.
When it would come to that part of the
Yeah.
ordinance, yes.
It's just, and I'm just going to clarify again, just if somebody is looking to get a building permit, that they'd have to come forward for approval.
Right.
It would be required.
But the more that you engage the community, the more one would expect that they will come to you as far as like, hey, I'm really wanting to do this to my house. What do you guys think? Do you
Right,
think this
right.
Yes.
would match in with that? Okay.
So I anticipate there's gonna be more discussion, but from an administrative perspective and administrating the ordinances, I do not believe you are required to get a building permit for just putting up siding.
No.
No.
So
Right.
people could side their houses
Correct.
and go from a 4-inch reveal to an 8-inch aluminum, reveal.
same with windows, as long as it's 1-for-1 and no
What-
structural change.
No structural changes, as long as the opening, same with doors, as long as the opening is not increasing or decreasing, you don't need building permits. There should be some discussion and some thought, again, from an administrative perspective on architecturally appropriate, or whatever the phrase was. Because the picture on the screen behind us, they have a freeze board. If new siding jobs typically do not want to include the freeze board. And, it's an additional cost. Is that architecturally, appropriate? They have several bands in their siding, which is probably works on that house, but is usually atypical for the number of bands they have. And then they have the baseboard as well at the bottom. I mean, if someone just wanted to re-side that, and they didn't need to get a permit, they could just side that all in. 4-inch reveal vinyl siding
We go to aluminum instead.
or vertical. They can go vertical siding as well. That is a common thing. So, and like I said, subjective words like appropriate, it's, if you don't have, hard and fast definitions on what that is, and if you don't have, some limits, on what you would allow or not allow. I mean, I don't think aluminum siding really is a thing right now, so that just might be what's that phrase, like a red herring or something?
No, we're going back to the 70s. It's appropriate for houses now because it's less than 50 years old.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would have on that when we get to making ordinances that are very subjective, that leads into some legal issues for the city, I think, sometimes, where if it's very subjective and we go and enforce it on one party and we don't enforce it on another, because we say, well, subjectively, we don't like the siding you did, it's not a 1-for-1. That's kind of, it can lead into some issues if we don't have the approval process at all, because I'll have to think about it, and we might have to review it with city attorney if we do change the ordinance to see how that would happen, because typically if something's very subjective in the law, it makes it like non-enforceable.
Well, that's kind of how we got here.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because we weren't no longer holding our standards, and if we want to lower the standards, that's one thing, but
There
if
was a
we-
lot of language in there that could be construed either way, if it's
Well, I've been there even when MSU came in and did training, and we talked about wood siding. I remember back in the day, she was talking about wood siding, and that, cement board would be fine, because it's still a clapboard board and looks identical, but vinyl may not, so it's.
Well, it would be something that, if you guys decided to take our recommendation, we would be more than willing to work through the rewriting of the ordinance and finding the appropriate language to make that happen.
Sounds good.
Teresa, did you have something? I felt like you were.
The only thing I'm just really still concerned is about, and it's, maybe you guys have clarified this a little bit, is that, there was a committee of 7 or 9 people who told Jimmy he couldn't do this, but it was okay for Johnny to do that. That is what has started this whole historic district discussion. And that's what we really need to get away from.
We are all in agreement of that. That's why a lot of this focus is more on partnership and community engagement as opposed to enforcement and strict rules. That's a lot of what we heard from the public as well. So that's why we're really trying to turn a page, so to speak, and make it more user-friendly, if you will, so. Okay.
Was there anything else, council? Babe?
Just a question for council. How do we plan to respond to this and give some direction? Just recognizing the committee has come here looking for endorsement of a recommendation or feedback. How do we move forward with that?
Well, I was going to make a suggestion that our ordinance review team get back together and discuss this.
That would probably be advised, and then I would say have some time to mull it over, because this, we just got
Yeah.
this report Friday. And so I think every council member needs some time to look it over and think about it, and maybe bring it back up at next roundtable again as well.
I would hope to have something at least by the beginning of the year as far as,
Direction.
whether a draft or a direction or something. But I will say, I really appreciate all the effort that went into this. I know it was a lot. And thank you, Mr. Keela, for all of your help as well.
Yeah, I would like to personally thank all of you for your patience as we went through this. Thank Dave and Michael for their leadership on this. I think we did some really good work. we're on a good track.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a discussion regarding the relocation of select county offices. Joel, did you want to open this up?
Sure, I can just get this kicked off. This discussion's occurred a couple times at city council. We've had a subcommittee of council members meet with some representatives from the council, I mean, from the county as well. Rob Sorrow, the county administrator, and I believe Scott Beltman, our county representative-elect, his term starts in January, would like to come and present to the council on November 28th at your second meeting. The reason it's on the agenda for this evening is I was told at your last meeting it was brought up and council said they'd like to discuss it tonight, so that's why it's on the agenda. I will let you know that I only know of Martin Township that has passed a resolution so far opposing the relocation, and that several townships have tabled it and requested more information from the county.
And to be clear, I just asked it to be on the agenda, just because I had sent out the proposal to everybody, and so I wanted to be able to talk about this again. I'd heard back from a couple council members of how they felt it was important to go through with a resolution, so I would like just to have a discussion to see where people are at with this. I'm looking forward to their presentation. There was a pretty lengthy article in the newspaper about the proposed move. So, yeah, again, I just kind of want to know if people want to move forward with looking at that resolution. Did everybody have an opportunity to review it? Peter?
I've looked at it. I wouldn't be opposed to just kind of tabling whether we want to do a resolution till after the 28th when they do their presentation, so I got full knowledge of what their plans are at that time, because things are always shifting, I'm sure, with it, what's going on with it, so I don't want to jump to a conclusion on what's going on until they come and actually talk to us.
Okay. Anybody else? Dave,
I
in
think-
agreement?
I think that makes sense to get full information.
Okay. Looks like nods all around. Bill? Are you okay with waiting to make any sort of a?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, until after we hear from,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, sounds great. So they are coming November the 28th, correct, Joel?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so moving on, we will get to the review of September revenue and expenditure reports. Tracy?
I don't have anything specific to point out on it. It's just the next month, so if you guys have any specific questions, I can try to answer them for you.
Did anybody have any questions or concerns about the reports that were provided? No? Thank you again for putting that together. As always, I definitely appreciate to have that snapshot, so. Okay, next we have a review of council agenda. Staff, was there anything that needed amending or additions for the meeting? I didn't get any. Everything's good?
Everything's good.
Okay, council, did you have anything that you saw on the agenda in your review? No? Were there any specific questions that you wanted to discuss prior to? Like any questions you wanted clarification on? No? All right. So it is at 6:48. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the study session, and we will reconvene at 7. Good evening, everybody. It is 7 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call our regular city council meeting to order. Michaela, pull yourself together, would you? I'm kidding. Could you give us a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Zeter. Councilmember Hanse.
Present.
Councilmember Byrd. Councilmember Redding.
Here.
Councilmember Morgan.
Present.
Mayor Pro-Tem Galloway. Here. And Mayor Andrus.
Here. And I would like to make a motion to excuse Councilmember Byrd. He had let myself and the city manager know he would be absent today.
Second that.
It has been moved and supported. Is there any discussion, council? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have agenda item 3, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to invite everyone to please rise and join me in stating the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, we have agenda item 4, which is an approval of the agenda. Under 4A, we have an approval of the regular council meeting agenda for November 14th, 2022. Council, we did do a review of the agenda at the study session, and there were no additions or corrections noted by staff or other council members. So could I please get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next, we have agenda item 5, which is an approval of minutes. Under 5A, we have an approval of the study session minutes from our October 24th meeting. Staff, did you receive any notice about any corrections or additions? No? Council, in your review, did you see any additions or corrections to study session minutes? No. Seeing none, could I please get a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next, we have 5B, which is an approval of the regular meeting minutes from October 24th. I'm going to pose the same questions to staff and to council. If there are no additions or corrections to the regular meeting minutes, could I get a motion to approve as presented?
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next, under agenda item 6, we have special presentations and recognitions by mayor or council. Under 6A, we have a selection of mayor and mayor pro tem. At this point in the meeting, I will turn the meeting over to our city manager, Joel Dye.
All right, as with every year after the most recent election, we do the selection, or no, every year this time in November, we do the selection of the mayor and mayor pro tem for the upcoming year. For those who may not recall how this process works, I will open the floor for nominating position for mayor pro tem. John Doe can nominate Jane Doe, or Jane Doe can nominate John Doe. And then we do that until there's no more nominations. Then I close the nominations. And then you should all have yellow Post-it notes. You'll write down who you would like it to be. You will fold it. I will walk around and grab them. And then the clerk will read off who received the most votes, and we'll go from there. And then once Mayor Pro Tem is done, we'll do the exact same process except for mayor. Any questions on the process? Okay, and for clarification, you can nominate people who are not present. And then if you are nominated and you don't want it, you are also allowed to say thanks, but no thanks, as with past practices. You don't have to be forced to do something. So with that, I'm going to open the floor for nominations for Mayor Pro Tem.
I would like to nominate Councilmember Roger Byrd as mayor pro tem. I did speak with him, and he said he would be open to the nomination, although he is not present this evening.
Any other nominations for Mayor Pro Tem? I'm going to go ahead then, without objection, and close nominations for Mayor Pro Tem. We have one nomination for Mayor Pro Tem for Councilmember Roger Byrd. I'm still going to make you write who you think should be, and we'll come pick it up, just to keep in accordance with past practices.
Okay, I do have 6 votes for Councilmember Byrd to be Mayor Pro Tem, so we will have Mayor Pro Tem Byrd for the next year.
All right, moving on to mayor for the next year. I'm going to open the floor for nominations for mayor.
I would like to nominate Mayor Pro Tem Teresa Galloway as our next mayor.
I will accept that nomination.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations on the floor for the position of mayor for the next year? All right, seeing no nominations, I'm going to close the floor. Please write down who you'd like to be mayor, and I'll come pick it up.
All right, and we do have 6 votes for Teresa Galloway to be the next mayor.
That starts now, so please hand the gavel over.
Thank you.
You can switch seats if you guys want to, or you can just stay where you're.
We can stay where we're at. I'm fine. Okay, thank you, everyone. Next on our agenda is public comment. This is for items that are not on the agenda for tonight. Delora had stated that we do limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please walk up to the podium, state your name, sign the paper, and tell us your comment. So I welcome anyone who would like to come to the podium.
This is just for things that are not on the agenda at this point?
Correct. Yes.
I want to get my poster board and I'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Phil Zigulich. I'm on Manor Lane on the south side of Lake Allegan, which is right off Monroe Road. I know you're gonna have business after we leave, so let me just walk this. These are ugly pictures of when the lake was drained in the 70s. They drained it for about, I think, a couple of weeks for dam repair. So, I've been on Lake Allegan since I was 3 years old, and I'm now 39. So that's a lot of years. A lot of family, friends, etc. We've really enjoyed it. So really, that's about all I have to say. You know why I'm here, and a lot of people are here. We need your support. I'm sure you support us because it involves the whole town. So that's about it. And if you want to see a couple of these close up, you can go to the Facebook page, Lake Allegan Residents, and there's a couple of these on that site.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. Did you sign the paper there?
I will,
on the-
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Hi, my name is Kelly Jones. I have a house on the north side of Lake Allegan. I am a resident of the state of Illinois. That's where my primary residence is. And I have thoroughly enjoyed coming to Lake Allegan for over 10 years now. And never did it occur to me that Lake Allegan might not exist. Not only do I come here, but I also bring friends and family here from out of state, from other parts of the state of Michigan. They come and visit the area. They spend money because of the lake. So please help us. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comments?
I'm Carol Doringer. Guess what? I live on Lake Allegan. I'm also the chair of the Lake Allegan Association's Communications and Media Committee. We are planning to pester, only in the best way, some of our state and federal public officials, requesting that they give a lot of thought to keeping hydroelectric power in our state. If you were to spend a few moments on Consumers Energy's website, you go to their hydro page, they don't say much. If you read their publications about their commitment to clean energy, they don't even mention it. If you read the state of Michigan's My Healthy Climate Plan, they don't even mention hydroelectric power. Solar, wind, clean energy, state of Michigan, very ambitious goals, some of the most ambitious in the nation of all the states, to convert pure Michigan to clean energy by 2030. It's incredible, but they never mention river hydro like what we have here. So my request to you is keep your eyes out for media releases. Probably you're going to give a little holiday break here when everyone's distracted. But starting in the first of the year, we're going to do some things to raise our hand and say to state and public official, or state and federal officials, come on now, it's clean energy. So when that happens, I would just ask you as a body and as individuals to think about how you could put your own 2 cents in about that. Our economy as an area here certainly benefits from Lake Allegan. But I think as Michiganders, we all have a stake in this. So again, I'm not a legislative or city and local law expert by any means. I don't know what you can do as city council where the lake is not in the city per se, but keep your eyes peeled, listen, and if you can add any kind of an official endorsement, please do, because we would all benefit from that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa, may I ask a question? Agenda item 11F2, do you want us to all speak on that now, or should we wait till agenda comments? I'm happy to.
We can open it up to then, to public comment, so.
You want me to wait? Or do you want me to do?
It doesn't really matter. We can open it up for public comment at that point, too. Is there any more public comment? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on down to number 10, written petitions and reports from special committees. 10A is a request from Alison vanMelle. Joel?
Yeah, I'll handle it. Yeah, Miss vanMelle is on family vacation right now, so she couldn't be here this evening. She's organized a handful of Merry Markets since she began hosting them in downtown Allegan last year. You'll recall, she did one last year in November. Really bad winter event happened that morning of, and we relocated that one to the Griswold. She hosted one this summer on the riverfront. Council approved her plan. And then she has one planned for the 26th this year on the riverfront. However, in preparation of what happens if the winter weather gets really bad again, she is requesting that she be allowed to relocate it to the Griswold Auditorium, but pay the reduced rate of $70, which is what it costs for her to reserve the riverfront. This does bring a lot of people to the downtown area. You know, it's a positive, event for our area. It's unfortunate she's not here today to share her excitement. I'm probably not the best MC for, these kind of markets and stuff like that. I'm not a shopper. So this is a good thing for our community, though. And so council, you would have to approve that reduced rate.
Joel, is this just to relocate if the weather is not good?
No, this is preparation, and it will be marketed and promoted as at the Griswold.
Okay.
Good question, thank you.
I think the only thing I ever think of on these is that the same thing kind of applied to sponsorship or little note, City of Allegan on it or something, as usual.
Yeah, so that's a good point, and I would recommend that council, if you feel, you're willing to approve this rate, that, it's a condition that she, highlights and tags the city as a sponsor, of this program.
Is there any further discussion, council? Can I get a motion to approve this?
I will make a motion to approve the request for the reduced rate of $70 with the condition that the city is listed as a sponsor of the event.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next on the agenda is number 11, reports from boards, commissions, and city offices. 11A1 is the Historic District Commission, November 1st and 7th meetings. Dave, you gonna take this?
Yeah, so the November 1st and November 7th meetings, we're really focused on completing the report, finalizing a recommendation, preparing it to be delivered to council. Not a lot to add for those. I thought the group did a good job presenting today. You all have the complete packet of documents from that study. I believe this fulfills the commitment that the HDC made about a year ago to study its processes and deliver that report to council. And I thought they did an excellent job with it. And I think this is a really good example of a committee kind of pulling up their sleeves and getting into the work and really contributing some good information to council. So I appreciate the committee's good work on it, and I hope that council's able to respond to their recommendation effectively.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Next on the agenda is 11A2, is the Airport Advisory Board from November 7th meeting. Peter?
Yes, we met, new board member was present that came. We reviewed the crack seal and painting update that MDOT and Aero will be bid out the project for the completion of the 2023. I think we only did about half of it in the last one. I think we came to the conclusion they underestimated how much we would require. We did an update on the trees, tree removal and tree trimming. The bids are out. I think the bids are supposed to be back, are already supposed to be back, and we'll probably be getting those soon to council. A deer update, there's been some issues with deer out on the airport grounds, a couple of reports of them. There's been a request in to the MDNR to see what we could do, if any type of culling or any operations to help try to limit the deer presence on the runways. We will be losing one board member, I believe he notified us, I think, at the beginning of next year. He is moving out of the area or moving out of the city. And we also have 2 hangar vacancies, so that was brought up so that the board members could try to see if anybody was interested. I believe we were calling people that were on a waiting list but not having much success finding new occupants, so I'll say that here, so if anybody's got a plane, want to store it, we got a couple of places. And just a little discussion on the fuel pump and its limitations, so I'm not sure where that's gone, if we are able to fix that issue of maximum dollar amount that could be pumped or at a time.
Yeah, I believe that was corrected.
Okay, so, and that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Next on the agenda is 11A3, the Downtown Development Authority, November 9th meeting. Parker, please.
Yes, Delora was unable to attend, so I'll give this update. The DDA met on November 9th and discussed the upcoming infrastructure and streetscape project, specifically how to market the downtown during that project, to make sure that the public is aware that businesses are open and operating during that time, as well as a general discussion on the DDA's budget for marketing the downtown as a whole. So that discussion was had and will continue as we move closer toward the start of that infrastructure and streetscape project. And then we also had a discussion about downtown operating hours. This is a conversation that's been started at the downtown lowdown meetings. That group that meets once a month, made up of downtown business owners and managers. And just kind of what we've done is compiled data of the current open hours of 50 total retail, dining, and service businesses in the downtown. It doesn't include offices, just those other 3. And so that data was presented as we're just going to kind of take a look at what the current operating hours are, and then have that discussion and comparison to what would be considered successful downtowns and how downtown Allegan measures up to some of those other similarly operating cities. So that was about it.
Okay, thank you, Parker. Number 11A4 is the Public Spaces Commission that met November 9th meeting. And I will take this and Parker can back me up. We talked about the Parks and Recreation. We had people here from the Allegan Conservation District, and they are very interested in the community garden. They'd like to maybe it's all in the works yet, but possibly take over and make like a native species garden, and maybe do workshops in there. Something that even was tossed around, that the city sell this property to them, let them maintain it, put up signs. So there's a lot of potential there to make something nice of that corner. Because the garden, it's the community garden, hasn't really been a very well kept. I mean, it's been well kept, but when it comes to harvesting, there's not a lot of interest in that, and it just kind of grows into weed-looking corner, you know. So that was very interesting at that meeting, and I think that's something we need to look at seriously. The other, Joel broke the news. Parker kind of touched on it a month ago, but Joel broke the news that the trees are going to come down next week. Or next month. No, is it next week?
No, it was next week, last week, so it's this week.
This week. So, of course, everyone wanted to know about putting trees back up and replacing the trees, so. You talked about a grant that was available too, didn't you, or something maybe?
Yeah, the
possibly
Sparks
for-
grant, which is also later on in the agenda for the resolution.
Yep, okay. Now, Parker, did I forget something? It seemed like it was a short meeting, but,
No, I think you covered everything.
okay, all right, good. Okay, moving on down to the next item. 11B, the Finance Department. Typically, the new Pro-Tem would do this, but I'll do it unless you want to do it. We'll let Delora talk again.
Thank you. Accounts payable in the amount of $852,907.79. Payroll in the amount of $296,110.29 for a total disbursement of $1,149,018.58. I make a motion to approve accounts payable and payroll.
Support.
You will say all
All
in
in-
favor.
All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Joel. Okay, next on the agenda is 11B2, request to approve the fourth quarter budget adjustments.
So every time this year, council approves the fourth quarter budget adjustments for the previous fiscal year, so this would be fiscal year '22, after you receive the audit and you see that our finances are in a clean standing. So prior to the end of the fiscal year, you guys passed a resolution authorizing these budget adjustments. The finance department went through, made the adjustments, so our fiscal year ended in what's called a balanced standing. You saw the report this evening that highlighted we are in a clean financial position as a city, and so now we need you to approve those, and that's what this report summarizes. Tracy apologizes, she had to go home. So,
And Joel, just to confirm, these are all budget adjustments that were already approved by council?
throughout the previous quarter, correct.
So can we get a motion to approve these if there's no questions?
So moved.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. 11C, we have our police department. 11C1 is acceptance of a report on an emergency purchase of the police department water heater in the amount of $4,500 from Sumner Plumbing. If you recall, this was an item that was tabled from October 24th meeting. Joel?
Yeah, so I'm gonna kick this off, if that's okay with council. I apologize, my phone just went off. So emergency purchases. When you read the report, you noticed that it was a little different than the report you saw last October, because I wanted to identify that in our city charter, section 2-330, the city manager is permitted to immediately purchase supplies, et cetera, and then within 15 days of those purchases, we have to enter them into the council minutes. I was away from the office late last month when this previous report was put together, and so it had you guys approving the emergency purchases. They've already been purchased. The chart is very clear. I just have to let you know when I made those decisions and that you guys, they're entered into the minutes. We do have the police chief, Jay, here. If there's any questions specific about this, I asked them to be present for the meeting tonight. But the way the process works, and as you know, because you don't see these too often on your agendas, the department head contacts me and says, hey, we have an issue. And then I make the determination if it's an issue that has to be acted upon now or if it can wait. With this one, the issue was a water tank that was failing, a hot water heater that was failing and leaking on the floor. Regardless of the department, we need to have hot water for sanitary conditions for our employees. They need to be able to wash their hands and disinfect themselves. Our police department specifically, their job puts them into close physical proximity with a variety of individuals throughout the day, and they need to clean up sometimes when they come in from a patrol. Some of the stories I hear, I just shake my head of what they have to go through as, public servants. So I determined that this one did qualify as emergency purchase. I would offer that, council, one of your goals this year is, and it's on there somewhere, about being a little more environmentally friendly. Yeah, it's the third one under section number 3. Strive towards being a more environmentally conscious and active community. A tankless hot water heater is on the high end of being an efficient hot water heater. So instead of going with a traditional one that most of us have in our basements, like a 40-gallon tank, this one is much more efficient and better for the environment. So those are the decisions that went into, moving this one forward. And so your motion would be just to accept this, report, so it's entered into the minutes.
I think the issue on the report that we were shown before was we didn't have an invoice.
That was, yeah, I was told that was an issue, and,
That was the main issue, is we just didn't know what we were actually approving, so.
and hopefully we corrected it by having it,
Yes.
that invoice attached to this.
I'll make a motion to approve, or to.
Accept.
The minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, it has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, next on the agenda, 11C2, acceptance of a report on the emergency purchase of the police department building repair to prevent ongoing water damage in the amount of $11,800 from Helmus Caulking and Repair Services. Again, this was another tabled item from October 24th.
So just for clarification, this one wasn't tabled at your last meeting. It wasn't on your agenda. Even though we have tabled
Okay.
at the end, I just caught that, so I
Oh, okay,
apologize.
sorry about that.
And again, I have the police chief here if there's specific questions of the police chief. This was a timing issue that got caught up at City Hall. So this summer, it was brought to our attention that there's some severe leaking occurring at the police department. We contacted several contractors to give us bids to seal and caulk the, openings where the leaking was occurring. Those, we only had one bid that came in. And I directed our facility maintenance supervisor and staff to go out and get more bids because we need multiple bids to make this happen. Things occurred over the later summer, early fall months, and no bids came in. And then in the middle of October, I believe it was, winter is around the corner. We need to fix this now, or damage is only going to continue. And so I went ahead and made the determination at that time that this qualified as an emergency repair, and we had to pull the trigger. We're going to have some conversation with the ordinance rewrite. We're looking at the purchasing ordinance right now on what do we do when we only have one bid that comes in. Because if it's more than 5,000, we have to have multiple bids for a project. And so we kind of need an out clause written into that ordinance language that allows us to hang our hat on. Because right now, to me, it's just not that clear. But this is why I determined this was the emergency. And I apologize that it's tabled under this item. We just were caught in a rut on the emergency purchases for this meeting.
My comment would be that it's a little disturbing to me that an $11,800 purchase became an emergency when we had worked on it previous. So that would just be a concern of mine.
At that level, is there any need for an approval? I mean, that would be over the spending limit.
So the emergency purchase, that section, when you read it, this is something where I can go, the way we read the ordinance, we're empowered to purchase or authorize purchases on the open market at the lowest attainable price, any necessary contractual services or supplies. So when it's determined as an emergency by the city manager, that threshold of 5,000, the way we interpret this is not applicable in these cases. However, if council wants to have a discussion, you have the ordinance group going through all the ordinances, the purchasing ordinance is one of them. We can have that discussion.
Anybody have any more comments? Okay, so we are looking for a motion to acceptance, to put this in the acceptance of the minutes as well.
I'll move to accept the report on the purchase order.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next on the agenda is 11D, the water utilities. 11D1 is the acceptance of a report on the emergency purchase of a water resource recovery facility autoclave in the amount of $13,500 from Booth Medical.
So I am going to have Doug come up and explain because I do not know exactly everything an autoclave is, but he does.
Autoclave, the resource recovery facility. One, it does the digestion for our phosphorus, daily phosphorus sampling, and the sterilization for our BAC-T testing daily. Happened to be one day, all of a sudden we noticed a puddle of water underneath it. It's a pressurized vessel where it pressurizes, heats up, kind of like a pressure cooker. And we noticed water underneath it. We examined it, found a crack in the pressure vessel. At that point, we called Midwest Equipment. They're the local service rep for that brand. And they came in a few days later, basically said that the vessel's cracked, there's nothing you can do about it. So from when we noticed the crack to when they were able to come in, we had searched around through online, found several places that had them. Booth Medical was the lowest price for a new one and lowest price in shipping. At that time, Joel was away on family issues. I asked Tracy, I says, this is something we need in our lab. It's a daily routine. We need to do it. I mean, we're required by permit to do these tests. She said, go ahead. You know, I was going to go order it anyways, but wanted to clear it with her that we needed to get it in. So we ordered it. Booth Medical was able to deliver it within about 5 days, and we got it back in, installed, and are using it. So.
What does this do to the budget?
This is able to be absorbed into the existing repair and replacement budget.
Is there any questions for Doug? Okay, could we entertain a motion, please?
Make a motion to enter this into the minutes.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next on the agenda is 11D2, request to approve a purchase order in the amount of $21,609 from Northwest Kent Mechanical Company to install a heating system in the cold storage vactor truck garage at the Department of Public Works.
Yeah, so, excuse me, when the city purchased our new vactor truck this summer, it is a little bit larger than the previous one, so the spot in the normal DPW garage for it, it no longer fits. So, working with DPW director and staff over there, we determined we could fit it in the back cold storage room, but it's cold storage. That part of the building is insulated already. The door, the garage door for that, it was not. Water utilities guys this fall purchased insulation, insulated the door for, you know, in that area. And then I asked Joel, you know, about getting bids. He said, you know, the DPW just had the boiler replaced this past summer. Northwest Kent was the contractor on that. He said contact them, because our expectation was just to expand the boiler system into that back room. Northwest Kent come in and looked it over. In their proposal, which was in your packet, option number 2 is actually expanding the boiler system to include the back room. They said, but we can also do a standalone system in there, would save you, you know, approximately $11,000 to $12,000 by doing it, not adding it onto the boiler system. So in order to get heat in the back room, we're recommending that we just go with the option number 1, which is a standalone system for in that back room.
Thank you, Doug. Is there any questions for Doug? Could I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Support.
The motion has been made and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. 11E1, acceptance of a report on emergency purchase of repairs to the Salter Unit number 210. Assuming Joel's gonna take this.
I will handle this. Our DPW director is getting ready for Deer Day tomorrow, opening season, I believe they call it, or something like that.
That's tomorrow.
That's tomorrow. So in October, council, you were informed that Salter Unit 210, which is a 2002 International was experiencing low power. We sent it up to Gemini Services and had them look at why it was experiencing low power. The turbocharger and the 6 injectors were the main cause, as it was what I'm going to call up on the rack. They noticed there's damage to the cylinder heads and exhaust manifold as well. So when a truck is already at the mechanic and it's already in the air, and they say you also have to do A, B, and X, Y, and Z as well, a decision has to be made. So I said, you know what, Doug, to me, this is the emergency repair. We don't want to have it come back to us and then go right back up after council approves that. So we went ahead and we did that additional, repair, and that it's going to come out of the fund balance. And then we'll be ready for winter, which showed up yesterday or Saturday.
Okay, thank you, Joel. Is there any questions for Joel, council?
I don't have a question, just a comment that I understand emergencies happen, but when we have 4 of them on the same agenda, it's kind of,
Not comfortable for me.
correct, yeah, it's not comfortable for me either, so we can just be aware of that, and
Yeah.
if there's time, bring it to council ahead of time, but I guess the definition of an emergency doesn't always allow that, so.
Okay, could I get a motion, please?
I'll put a motion to accept this into the minutes. Emergency repair.
I'll support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next, 11F is city manager and city clerk. 11F1 is a request to discuss a proposed appreciation gift for city board members. Joel, you.
Yes, over the year, council's talked multiple times about how they want to share or show their appreciation to the countless volunteers on our city boards, Planning Commission, Historic District Commission, which you heard from, a few members this evening. It was somewhat decided upon that, a physical gift in addition to a card would be appropriate. I do have staff that enjoy picking out gifts and doing that kind of thing. And I'm requesting that we have a budget of $1,000 set aside. We have approximately 30-some volunteers that sit on various boards. They would like to give them something that isn't just a throwaway trinket, but something that, highlights the city and, at the same time shows council's and staff's appreciation for the unpaid work they do.
So are you looking for suggestions or just?
I'm looking for a budget to be set. The front office staff has given me a handful of suggestions, and the conversation ended with, those all sound great. You guys pick which one you want. I don't even want to be involved in picking out gifts.
Okay.
But if there are suggestions from council, feel free to reach out through Michaela. She's part of that group that's, trying to organize this, and you can give your suggestions to her. We envision that this will be something that's annual, and we probably don't want to do the same gift every single year. So it's something to take into consideration. But if you have ideas, and she can share with you guys individually what their ideas are, they're really cool.
Okay.
So approximately $30 each volunteer, or you're just,
Yeah, approximately.
okay. I think this is a fantastic idea. I know we've had multiple discussions on how to show that appreciation. So at the last meeting, that seemed to be, council's direction to go. So thank you for that.
Okay, we aren't looking for a motion or nothing, it was just discussion, right?
Oh, I would like a motion to approve the budget.
Okay.
Even though it's below
All
my
right, to
$5,000 limit, it still would be appreciated for me to say, yeah, go.
It's an emergency.
Even me, the audience laughs. And most of them are not city residents, and they find humor in this. Thank you, Teresa.
Could we get,
Budget of $1,000 for boards appreciation gift. But if it comes back to 1,001 penny, you're gonna be hearing from me.
I'll support.
Let's just go say that. You beat me to it.
motion has been made and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. 11F2, request to adopt resolution 22.45, recommending an economic impact study for the proposed removal of the Calkins Dam. So at this point, Joel, would you like to take this and talk
Sure.
before we open it up for public
Yeah.
comment? Okay.
So, again, at your previous meeting, it was brought, which I was not present at, it was shared with me by my staff that council wanted to do some kind of statement or make a motion regarding the potential removal of the Calkins Dam, and start with that, maybe we should first understand the economic impact that Lake Allegan has on the larger Allegan community. Because, that lake, even though it's not within the city limits, it does benefit the city and our businesses. So I went ahead and I put together a resolution 22.45, where it identifies the importance of Lake Allegan to the Allegan community, and then ends that, the city of Allegan requests that regional, state, federal, and private entities come together to fully fund a full economic impact study on the economic benefits of the Calkins Dam and Lake Allegan. I've been in conversations about the Lake Allegan thing now since early August, when consumers announced their desire to look at all 13 of their dams. I've been in contact with a handful of people in this room. I'm sure I've received, and most of council members have received, a handful of emails or handwritten letters from people in this room. And it's appreciated, when citizens want to be involved. With that said, I really think the first place to start is getting the community around looking at what the economic impact is. And I don't think it's right for the city to take that lead unless there's a vacuum of leadership there. And I don't think there's a vacuum of leadership right now, especially with the Lake Allegan residents and the association they have going on. I think they can take that lead and we can be supportive of it. Or the county can take the lead, since it's a regional issue. It's not just one township, it's Valley Township and Allegan Township. Maybe the county can take that lead. So that's why I wrote the resolution, and that last paragraph, therefore be it resolved, where I said, we request that regional. We're not putting our foot in right now. We might have to at a later point. But I think this resolution is something that if council adopts, we will share it with, our contacts at the county. We'll share it with West Michigan Regional Planning Commission, David B. As you know, we have a great relationship with Eric Nesbitt's office. So I'll reach out to Eric personally and say, hey, this is coming on the pipeline. But there's going to have to be, a tip, a point, that is the organization that takes the lead on this. And so that's why that resolution was written in that way. Fully supportive, I think, from the city's perspective, I would advise council that we need to do what we can do to preserve Lake Allegan in its current form. While we might be looking at removing our own dam here, they are two totally different things. They're apples and oranges as far as I'm concerned. So, any questions from council on the resolution that was submitted?
I was just going to ask Peter, actually. You had brought this forward from the county. They were looking to do this. We were just kind of in support of their efforts as well. Is
Yeah,
that
they
correct?
passed a similar resolution, I believe, at their, I forget which meeting, but they passed that a while ago. And I said, well, it's a good idea to say, well, let's look at the economic impact similar to them in support. I would suggest that we, as Joel said, forward this on to both our state senators, state representatives, and also our federal representatives as well, and to the Michigan Economic and MEDC, and anybody that we can, just to show that we're in support of doing such a thing. Kind of helps with getting the ball rolling on saying, let's get some sort of impact study going.
Go ahead, Dave.
I'm looking at the resolution from the county, and there's some really specific language about who it's addressed to and what actions are being called for from the county administrator, the clerk. I wonder if we should consider some more specificity in our resolution. I'm certainly supportive of it, but just want to make sure it's effective and it's clear in that resolution what our intent is. I can certainly email the link to the county resolution to everybody if that helps.
David, you just mind reading, like, what that language is real quick?
Okay, so therefore be it resolved, the Board of Commissioners requests the West Michigan Regional Planning Commission take the necessary and immediate measures to secure funding and assistance from the U.S. Economic Development Administration and the Michigan Economic Development Corporation to conduct a full economic impact study of each dam, 8 of which exist within the West Michigan region. And then be it further resolved, the assistance of the Michigan Association of Counties, which I don't know applies directly to us, is also requested to secure the necessary funding and services from the MEDC. Be it further resolved, the county administrator is authorized to direct the services of Midwest Strategy Group in support of this effort. And be it finally resolved, the clerk is directed to provide a copy of this resolution to the boards of commissioners of the other counties in which Consumers Energy dams exist, and each Allegan County representative and senator. So again, I think it's clear the organizations that they're requesting this action from, and it's clear who this communication is going to. Just the specificity of it, I think, to me, I see the difference between that and the draft we have right now. And I think that specificity makes a lot of sense to me.
Do you have anything?
I agree that the specificity is good. I just think that the county is actually the one who is like trying to really push that through there. I mean, I'm not sure what the Peter, were you like involved with that?
I
county?
wasn't involved
You
in
just
that.
got a copy of it?
Got a
Okay.
copy of it from when I was notified that they had done it and looked at the
Okay.
video of the meeting. It's good to have the specificity. It's also, I'm okay with just saying that as a city, we will forward it on to our state, federal reps, the MEDC, and state, just we'll forward it on in support of doing this. This one's more specific to our dam where the county was addressing all the dams with consumers. And this one, I noticed we're really focused in on, we want to make sure that our asset gets a good review of what's the economic impact. Their resolution, I think, was for all dams that were consumers was considering removing all 13. And this one's a little more specific, so.
Correct. My thought on specificity was the intended audience. I think ours is addressed to local, state, federal agencies, which is a very broad audience. And here we've got these groups, like you said, the county's taken the lead on engaging with these groups specifically. And I'm definitely, again, very supportive of the effort. I'm just wondering if that's a more effective way to go with the resolution.
I don't think it really affects the resolution one way or another myself, just as long as we make sure we're stating what we'd like to see and that we forward it on. I don't think it, because it does state in there that it's requested that all regional, state, federal, and private entities come together and do an economic impact, so it kind of addresses them all. It's just not a specific, I don't know if we want to figure out which specific entities or just say, we're going to authorize the city to forward this on to state, local reps and MEDC and anybody else that's interested. It's of course available as well. We could put it on our website that the resolution was passed and here's the resolution if we really wanted to, just so that people have easy access to it. It's really just a statement, I think, as a city and as a council to say, we're in support of doing this.
Try to support it.
And then other regional state senators and everything can look at it and go, both the county's in support of doing this, the city's in support of doing this showing them that we want this done as a community. And so.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else from council? Now I'm going to open it up to public comment. Okay, at this time, if anybody from the public would like to come up and talk about the Calkins Dam. Again, you'll have 3 minutes, please.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Harbor, and I am a resident on Lake Allegan at 1750 Waters Point Drive. Very much appreciate the conversation tonight and the pre-work. Peter has been helping me make connection with this group. Also appreciate the specificity where it makes sense. Perhaps the one thing we would add is asking it to go to the other 13 dams and the commissioners in that area as well. We're just looking for power in numbers. As you can see, you know, it's important to us. These are fast becoming beyond neighbors but friends as well. And I was at the meeting on August 31st where consumers announced to about 250 of us that they were considering removing Calkins Dam. And we feel that that would be devastating, not just to the Lake Allegan residents, but to our entire community. And we feel like, you know, we want to be in this together with you. We appreciate that support. In addition to passing the resolution, we'll be looking for your unique knowledge and perspective that you bring to the table from experience in dealing with large corporations, and in this case, one that's coming in and threatening to take away an important part of our community with Lake Allegan. This economic impact analysis will also need your input. As it's completed, each of them around the 13 dams, we would want you to participate in that, providing the appropriate information and detail as required. We certainly don't know what that looks like yet, but we are very, very appreciative of Jim's Story. Do I have his name right? Mr. Story.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
Chairman
from
Jim
the-
Story and the other commissioners supporting this as loudly and as strongly as they are. And I think they've set a nice precedent for the proposal that you have written. Is there any other questions for us that we can answer?
We don't typically interact
Sorry,
with the
that's
public
my- that
comment,
is my
but
bad
that's-
as a
But that's okay, we
marketer.
appreciate you asking, so.
But we appreciate your support and passing the resolution. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Is there any other further public comment? Sure.
My name is Ken Yonker. I live at 3853 Forest Trail in Allegan here. Again, I'm a Lake Allegan resident. When I want to know what's going on in Allegan, I usually Google it. What's happening in Allegan? And yes, I'll get reports about the fireworks display. I'll get reports about the ball drop on New Year's, the Regent Theater, the new library, the farmer's market, all those things. But one thing I've also got reports on, I get reports, Chicagoland fishing report. And I'm thinking, they're talking about the Lake Allegan area here. They're talking about the big fish they've caught and the great days they've had. I've called some of these places. They actually have a bragging board where they're showing pictures of what they've caught here. They talk about spending a lot of money here, and I just think we're a team here. Excuse me. We're a team here, all having the same future, and I think without Lake Allegan here, we'll all suffer. In other words, I think these people do not know where the city of Allegan ends and where it doesn't. They just know it's the area. They're having a good time, and we're all partners in this. And again, we thank you for your support for making sure Lake Allegan remains. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other further comment? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. Council, I come back to you and ask for a motion. Do we want to change this? Do we want to accept it as it is, or? I think the thing here is just getting the word out that we're supportive of what's going on. So it's up to you guys.
I'm fine with the way it's written currently, if we want to readdress it to the other 13 dams, but even as such, it already does mention that in our resolution. It's really a show of support that we want to see something done.
So you're going to make a motion?
I would make a motion to accept the resolution 22.45 as written, as presented to us.
I'll support.
Okay, it has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. And we will do what we can to support it, because it, ultimately, even though it's not in the city, you know, it is something that's very important and very well represented for the county of Allegan, so. Okay, moving on, 11F3, request to adopt resolution 22.46, approving the Spark grant application for the pickleball courts project. That's what you didn't let me talk about at the meeting, at our public spaces meeting. I knew there was something else Joel had brought up.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So, yeah, the state of Michigan has announced a one-time grant called the Sparks Grant for recreation, for new recreation development in the state of Michigan. I believe this program is being funded with COVID funds from the federal government. In our 2018 to 2023 five-year recreation plan, we talked about doing a pickleball court complex out at the sports complex. The current pickleball court the city operates at Rossman Park is beneath some of the largest oak trees in Allegan County, and it constantly drops branches and junk on the court. And it's just, well, it's a neat use. It's not in the optimal location. So we looked around other places. We went to that five-year plan. That five-year plan stated that the sports complex is the area they like to see it. There are no trees in that general area, so this would be a really good location. The total cost with contingencies and engineering is just under $400,000 at $378,000 and some change. This grant application does not require a local match, even though we might throw some in there just to sweeten the application. But for this resolution, we are not talking about a local match. So this was shared at the Public Spaces Commission. The Public Spaces Commission unanimously recommended City Council approve this resolution and complete the application and get it submitted to the state of Michigan. Any questions?
I think the community garden would be a better spot for one of them. It's just because it's just up outside of town.
It is.
It's really not
That's what's
very
so-
convenient for people to walk to and use. You have to either get in a car and drive or figure out how to get a golf cart there if you can figure out how to do it without hitting an MDOT road.
And
It
that
is a struggle.
You
Go ahead.
And that was one of the concerns at Public Spaces meeting, was that it's lighted, it'll look so nice, you know, we're undecided about the lighting, you know, if you have to push a button to turn it on or whatever, but that was one of the concerns with, you know, people just can't drive by and see it and, you know.
Cutting into it.
Kind of know it's there.
Was this cutting into at all the soccer fields? Because I kind of see it.
It is short.
Yeah, so this is cutting into one of the 6 soccer fields we have out there. One of the soccer fields that is off the screen is divided into what I'm going to call Tiny Tykes fields. So we'll just work with Allegan United to relocate the Tiny Tykes fields over to this location. And this is also a desire, you know, with that sports complex, it costs the city to mow. It costs the city to maintain. And we either have to embrace it as a sports complex and get more uses out there, or have a different kind of conversation. And this is embracing it and getting more uses out at the sports complex.
And this would allow for, I know I've talked to Parker before about doing like pickleball tournaments or like bringing like
Yeah.
events in, or, you know, having it be part of Bridge Fest or something where there's a tournament and we would have the court space then for something like that, or have leagues.
And if you really can't tell, I'm not a pickleball player.
You could be. I play
Okay,
pickleball.
Don't.
You could-
Anyway, do they play pickleball in the winter outside? Or is it that dedicated of a sport or not? Would we have to clean?
No.
they were
So we
using
would not
some.
shovel this
Okay, that was what I wondered. if
unless
we had
council
more-
unless 4 council members said start
No,
shoveling
and
the
that
court.
was what I, no.
Yeah.
And that was what I was
That's
concerned.
not to say that dedicated pickleball players will go out there with a shovel and clear it on their own, because they are that dedicated of
Okay.
We
athletes.
used to have dedicated
I-
tennis players, but that fad kind of
Right.
went away, and that's where the other park was converted to pickleball.
I think
so-
we have one at the county who will be very disappointed that it moves out there, and that's Judge Buck.
I think the other one still stays, doesn't it?
Well, the one in the Griswold basement,
Judge Buck is a big. I
He's
mean,
a
he
big
does that at
pickleball fan.
lunch- He does that at lunchtime.
so this is our, our recommendation. The Public Spaces Commission also reviewed this. They also recommend we move forward with this project.
Do we look at the long-term cost of maintaining this new asset? Because, yeah, currently we have to mow grass, but eventually we have to maintain this.
Eventually, you will have to resurface this
Yeah.
down the road.
Any idea length of time? mean,
I
how
do not
long
have,
do
not
these-
off the top of my head, no.
Are we gonna at least put a donation box with a QR code and actually start doing that at our parks to try to start collecting some funds? I know we've
Yeah.
talked about it in the
So,
past.
so Tracy and I have talked I forget the name of it. It's not On Point. That's the Community Mental Health program. But our online payment system allows for a donation account. So we are looking, and this is something I believe Councilmember Redding talked to me a couple of years ago, just saying it'd be nice if we just have donate here at some of our big,
I know
assets.
That's come
So-
up at public spaces before about putting boxes out there or whatever, for
Yeah, so,
donating,
so through Invoice Cloud, we could create a QR code where you just click it, takes you to a link. And if people want to enter their payment information, we could figure something out that way. But it's Invoice Cloud is the name of the service we use.
Yeah, I know I've talked about that a couple times, because donation boxes are just, if people have cash, it's great, but also you have to go out and actually make sure people empty them and
Well,
take care of it. And it's better to just say, hey, if you want to donate cash, you can stop in City Hall, or if you're gonna do it electronically, here's our QR code. And then the question always comes up, are we going to restrict ourselves on some of those funds? Make sure that we kind of just set them aside for park maintenance and park improvements. It's something in the future, that's not part of this, but we really have to look at that again as far as when we're adding an asset like this, that's gonna have long-term maintenance cost. And we've talked about how much cost it already cost us to maintain just the sports complex. And we've talked about how we inherited a lot of our regional assets. And I'm just looking at this going, am I inheriting something that I'm gonna, in 5, 10 years, or 15, 20 years go, nobody's playing pickleball anymore, now we just gotta bulldoze it, kind of thing, because it's gonna cost too much to repave it. Although this is a 100% Spark, so I have no issue on it today, going for it, but if it was just our money, I probably wouldn't. I'd say no.
Okay, so can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to support.
Second, sorry.
Okay, we do have a motion and support. All in favor? Please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. That is it. We need comments or, number 13, communication from city manager, council, and mayor. Staff, Joel?
Yeah,
Parker?
very quickly, on our website, under the news section, we have the Downtown Infrastructure and Streetscape Project Update website established. That's where we're gonna be updating people on the streetscape as things start rolling out. Parker and I, the DDA, will be working on some logos and taglines, like downtown shopping, open, stuff like that, over the winter months. So when things really get going next spring, we're highlighting and focused on the downtown. As Parker mentioned, the trees along Hubbard and Locust and Brady will all be removed hopefully later this week is when they plan on starting removing these trees. The reason we have to remove them now is because of the endangered northern Indiana bat that nests up here, possibly, maybe. But we can only remove them during the non-nesting time, which is the spring time, which is between winter, fall and spring, during the winter months. I want to thank council for your thoughts and prayers and condolences, and the plant you bought me, it's on my desk, during my mom's passing. It was appreciated. I want to thank city staff for, all the hard and extra work they did over these past couple weeks when I was hit and miss being here and not here. So that's been appreciated, and thank you. That's all I have.
Parker?
Yeah, just quickly, between now and your next meeting on November 26th is Small Business Saturday. It's a nationally recognized day of supporting local. I mentioned during the discussion about the DDA, there are 50 retail, dining, and service businesses in the DDA boundaries. That doesn't even include just what's in the city limits. So hopefully you have the opportunity to shop local this holiday season. And then coming up on December 2nd, the first Friday in December, of course, will be our parade to kick off Festive Fridays. Michaela and I will be reaching out to all of you for your hopeful participation in the parade that will step off at 7 o'clock. But like I said, we'll get an email out that has all that information for you too.
Thank you, Parker. Michaela, do you have anything?
I do. So we had the election on November 8th. It was very successful. We had a very large voter turnout, surprisingly so, honestly. Very similar, but not quite to the level of the presidential election in 2020. I'm very grateful for the work that my inspectors put in. I sent out an email this afternoon to thank them, but I just wanted to publicly thank them as well because they did a great job.
Thank you, Michaela. Bill, do you have anything?
I want to thank Delora for her service as mayor for all these years. I appreciate it very much. There was something else I had on my mind. The Calkins Dam. I don't need an economic study to tell you how much that area has done for our city of Allegan. As a former business owner, I know what it's done for our community. I approve 100% of the resolution. I am proud that we are not coming late to the lunch table because we need that to stay. That's it for me.
Thank you, Bill. Dave?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Okay. Delora?
I just wanted to say thank you to Michaela for the wonderful election that you ran. It was great. Also, just a shout out to our city staff in general and our department heads. I will say, as mayor, I received a lot of different communications from residents about issues. And as soon as I send out an email, like to Doug, for example, he would have somebody out there right away. So our city staff is always very responsive. I just had Doug Kopsbon took care of something for me. I'd seen a broken board on the boardwalk and sent him a picture, and he had that fixed the very next day. So just a shout out to our city staff and for all that they do. Congratulations to our new mayor, Teresa, and Mayor Pro-Tem Roger. If you have any questions, don't ever hesitate. I will definitely
You know it.
part what I can.
Thank you. Peter, do you have anything?
No, not today.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
We passed an increase with the Life EMS, and then they got notice right after we did that they are being evicted out of their spot. And then I heard today that there's a couple hangars that are open. Is that a possibility that they could work from any place there in the airport?
So unfortunately, all airport activities have been funded one way or another through our block grant through Aero, and it has to be used for airport-related activities. So I don't think that's an opportunity, but that's something we'll verify. I'll reach out and make a few phone calls to MDOT Aero and see if there's a way around it for emergency services. There might be, I just don't know off the top of my head. The chief and I talked today. Yeah, we're gonna have, they need a landing spot. I don't know if the fire department has any available bays over there. I mean, more than just a place to park their vehicles, it's a place to be in between calls for employees. So they're not just sitting in a truck, but they might be, 10 feet from the truck inside the office or near a restroom break kind of a thing. I don't know what the township office is with their attached fire garage, if there's an open bay or two up there. So there are some options the chief and I are kicking around. But I'll look into the airport stuff and see if there's a loophole for emergency services. There might be.
Don't forget, Allegan County Transport in the industrial park.
That's a very good point, yes. We'll reach out to them as well.
They have at least garage space and maybe some office space or something, maybe they could lease
Yeah.
from them.
And if they don't need, yeah.
Or Allegan Mental Health across the street from where they're at now. The new mental health.
Oh,
building.
yeah, at Shopko, okay.
Say that building unfortunately is already too small for the staff that's moving in.
It won't be for long. They'll lose their budget and then it'll get cut into nothingness. It's the truth of it. They built out, they,
But yeah, we will, I mean, yeah, we'll keep our ears open and see if we can help them. I'm disappointed that Ascension made that decision. It's an unfortunate decision.
Is that all, Mike? Anything else? Okay. I got a couple of things. I would like to thank you all for electing me to be mayor. I have some really big shoes to fill. Delora did an awesome job, I feel. So I will be reaching out to her, I'm sure. Staff, I'll have your support when I need you, all of you. So, Joel, I am sad to hear about your mother, and my thoughts and prayers were with you and your father. It's a hard thing. If everyone could send me what they would prefer to be on the committee. Dolores says we need to probably get that going here in the next month or so, as soon as possible, actually. So the list of the committees, if you would shoot me an email, if you want to stay where you're at or what you prefer. I know Delora has served on a couple the last 2 years, so we need to give her a break on something really easy and simple, I think. Well, yeah, it's just, but anyway, if you would shoot me an email on that. And good job on the election, Michaela. You're awesome. That's all I have. So if nobody has anything else, we'll adjourn the meeting at 8:18.